Camilla was in a very, very unpleasant situation. She was almost became a prisoner in her own home. She was vilified.
No one expected Queen Camilla's outburst when she saw Princess Charlotte wearing one of Princess Diana's most iconic jewels, the Spencer Tiara. Insiders reported that Camilla lost her composure and went crazy. She confronted 10-year-old Princess Charlotte for wearing Diana's tiara and demanded that she remove it immediately. This was shocking to everyone present. But what was even more shocking was Charlotte's unexpected response, which left Camilla embarrassed. What exactly was Charlotte's unexpected response, and why did Camilla not want Charlotte wearing the Spencer tiara? Stay with us as the full story unfolds. Queen Camilla goes crazy over Diana's Spencer tiara. The look on Queen Camilla's face was caught on camera the very moment she saw Princess Charlotte step into the banquet hall wearing the iconic Spencer tiara. She looked startled, almost terrified, as though she had seen a ghost. But why was Camilla's reaction so intense? Let's find out. It was during Camilla's private banquet held in celebration of her 78th birthday just 2 days earlier. The royal family had gathered together, joined by a circle of close friends and associates, to mark the occasion with Camilla at the center. The evening went on with laughter and talk until the Wales family came in: Prince William, Catherine, and their 3 children. They were all well dressed, but Charlotte drew the most attention. She looked simple yet graceful in her dark blue gown, giving her a presence beyond her age. Nothing seemed out of place during the banquet until Charlotte stepped away from the table. This was when the real drama began. When Charlotte returned to the banquet hall, she looked different as she had the Spencer tiara on her head. The room immediately fell silent. Charlotte's headpiece stole the attention of every guest as whispers swept across the hall. Camilla froze, visibly shaken in her seat with her eyes fixed on the tiara as though it carried a curse. The look on her face asked the question without words. Why was she wearing that to my party? Charlotte calmly sat back at the table, but the entire energy of the evening had shifted. Camilla's eyes never left Charlotte, and murmurs of Diana's memory began to ripple louder through the crowd. "Charlotte is growing up to be like Diana," someone remarked. Lively debates followed, with some saying Charlotte resembled her grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, while others insisted Charlotte's grace and presence already mirrored Diana's. Camilla forced a smile, trying to focus on her meal, but the evening slipped further out of her hands. Her celebration was becoming a tribute to Diana, the woman whose shadow still lingered over the monarchy and whose memory had always unsettled Camilla. As if the humiliation were not enough, insiders later revealed that an unnamed royal raised their glass in honor of Diana's legacy. Guests followed suit, standing to toast the late princess. Camilla had no choice but to lift her own glass in unison, smiling to everyone, while inside she burned with frustration. This was supposed to be her night, yet once again, Diana's name stole the spotlight. Camilla looked around the table, feeling like the black sheep of the family once again, seated like an outcast at her own banquet. And all of it had begun with Charlotte's decision to wear Diana's tiara. As Camilla looked back toward the Wales family, who were laughing and chatting freely, she suddenly noticed that Charlotte was no longer seated among them. At that moment, Camilla excused herself and quietly slipped away from the table, eyes scanning the corridors until she found Charlotte with her younger brother Louis, tucked away in one of the side rooms. But no one was prepared for what happened next. "You shouldn't be wearing that," Camilla said softly to Charlotte when she finally approached her. Insiders reported that Camilla's tone was calm as she spoke to Charlotte. It was as if she were concerned about the value and fragility of the tiara. This tiara was not just any ornament. It was the Spencer tiara, the one Diana first wore on the day of her wedding to Prince Charles in 1981. The tiara had belonged to the Spencer family for generations and was loaned to the daughters of the Spencer family during symbolic events. Since Diana's passing, it was rarely seen in public except in 2018 when Diana's niece, Celia McCorquodale, wore it for her wedding. Camilla tried to understand why Charlotte had loaned the tiara for the event, but Catherine stepped in. Seeing her daughter standing with Camilla, Catherine asked if everything was okay. Those nearby expected Camilla to answer directly, perhaps to voice her disapproval of Charlotte's tiara or raise a complaint. But instead, she said nothing more. Without explanation, Camilla turned and walked back into the hall, resuming her seat as though nothing had happened. Insiders later suggested that Camilla kept quiet because she knew that any statement made at that moment would lead to an unexpected scandal. Even as the evening continued, Camilla kept looking at Charlotte as the conversation circled back to Diana and her legacy. Camilla had never been comfortable whenever Diana's name arose. At past gatherings, she had stayed silent, rarely offering a word if the late Princess of Wales was mentioned. This night was no different. Camilla kept quiet, knowing that if she spoke, it could easily be taken as bitterness or jealousy. But Camilla's silence did not change anything. The whole party that was meant to celebrate her was now lost. All eyes were on the tiara and what it reminded people of. It was not just gold and stones, it was Diana's memory, and it took over the night. But why did Diana's tiara hold such power over Camilla? Why did it have the strength to ruin her party, to haunt her mood, to undo her carefully constructed composure? To understand this, one must go back to the beginning of Camilla's royal journey. Camilla's royal journey. Camilla was never destined for royalty. She was not born to rule, nor groomed for royal life. Yet she forced her way into the royal circle and fought to secure the place she now holds as queen consort. Still, many whisper of the path Camilla took to get to this position, a path some call ruthless. Decades have passed, but for a great number of people, the stain of Camilla's past remains. They remember her as the woman who broke a fairy tale royal marriage, shadowed Diana, and turned her personal ambition into royal power. But how did she do this? Keep watching to find out. Camilla Shand was born on July 17, 1947, in London. She grew up in Sussex with her parents, Bruce and Rosalind Shand, and her two younger siblings. Her father, a decorated officer, later became Vice Lord Lieutenant of East Sussex. Camilla's upbringing was privileged, surrounded by comfort and connections. At the age of 11, she began attending Queen's Gate School in South Kensington. Friends recalled how she often boasted about her family link to royalty through her great-grandmother Alice Keppel, who had famously been the mistress of King Edward VII. To Camilla, this connection was a point of pride, and she never hesitated to say it. After high school, Camilla studied in Paris for 2 years before returning to London as a debutante in 1965. When Camilla returned to London as a debutante, she met Andrew Parker Bowles, a cavalry officer who moved in the same social circles, and they soon began dating because they liked each other from the start. Their relationship had its ups and downs, but they still stayed connected. Andrew's career in the army kept him busy, and he was often traveling outside of London, which meant they spent a long time apart. However, they exchanged letters to keep the bond alive, but the distance weighed on them. It was during one of these periods, in 1970, that Camilla met Prince Charles at a polo match. Their first meeting stood out because of how natural it felt. They clicked instantly, laughing and talking as though they had known each other for years. Not long after, they became lovers, unable to keep away from each other. But just as with Andrew, distance interfered, because Charles had to focus on his naval career and was set to leave London for 2 years. Before leaving, Charles and Camilla promised to keep the relationship alive by writing to each other as often as possible. Charles left London and maintained a strong connection with Camilla through letters. Many people thought Charles might have married her, or at least proposed before leaving. But he did not. At that time, Charles was only in his early 20s and still considered too young for marriage. He also knew that his parents, Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip, would not approve of Camilla. She did not come from an aristocratic royal family, and her great-grandmother Alice, Keppel, had been the mistress of King Edward VII. For Charles to marry Camilla would mean that a future king was marrying the great-granddaughter of a royal mistress, something the palace would find unacceptable. There was also another complication. Camilla was not a virgin, and it was reported that she and Charles had already shared intimate moments. In those days, virginity in a bride was seen as essential for someone who might one day be queen. With all of these factors against them, Charles chose not to propose, and Camilla, realizing their relationship had little chance of leading to marriage, allowed herself to drift back toward Andrew Parker Bowles, who had just returned to London from his naval service. Camilla and Andrew grew close again, now that he was back for good. They spent more time together, and their bond strengthened. Yet during this time, Camilla still received letters from Charles, and she replied to him as well, keeping both men tied to her in some way. However, the situation changed when Andrew decided to make things formal. He asked Camilla to marry him, and she accepted quickly. They were married in July 1973. When Charles learned of Camilla's marriage, he was shocked. Despite her engagement to Andrew, Charles and Camilla had still been romantically connected through their letters, which were often personal and affectionate. Charles had never imagined she would marry someone else so suddenly. The news left him hurt, but he could do nothing. Camilla had made the choice she felt was best for her. Charles poured his feelings into a letter to his great-uncle, Lord Louis Mountbatten, as he was the only one who knew of his relationship with Camilla. In that letter, Charles expressed his disappointment and pain, but he also knew he had to move forward. This moment closed the door on Camilla, and in time it opened the way for Diana Spencer to step into his life. Camilla and Charles settled their differences as they continued to keep a close relationship and focused more on becoming friends. Charles even became godfather to Camilla's first child, Thomas Bowles. This showed the depth of their friendship. Charles eventually moved on with his life and met the young Lady Diana Spencer. The first time Charles encountered Diana was during a visit to her sister, Lady Sarah Spencer, whom he was briefly dating at the time. He and Diana exchanged only a few words, but they crossed paths again in 1978 at Charles's 30th birthday celebration, where Diana was present. Although they spoke, they did not grow close until 1979, after Charles suffered the devastating loss of his beloved great-uncle and mentor, Lord Louis Mountbatten, who was assassinated by an IRA bomb. Diana expressed sympathy and offered him words of comfort, and from that moment, a quiet friendship began to form. Noticing the bond between them, Diana began to spend more time with Charles and soon received an invitation from one of Charles's close friends, Philip de Pass, to spend a few nights in West Sussex, England, knowing Charles would be there. The two enjoyed each other's company, sharing conversations, fishing, and quiet moments away from the public eye. Diana was also seen more frequently at Balmoral Castle. The media soon began pairing their names together in print, building speculation that the prince had finally found a suitable match. Prince Philip, aware of the growing press coverage, did not want gossip to tarnish his son's reputation, or Diana's, so he strongly advised Charles to propose to Diana. Charles followed his father's advice and asked Diana to marry him. Diana was overjoyed by the proposal, believing she was stepping into a perfect royal marriage. But this was far from the truth. Although Camilla was married, she and Charles remained romantically connected. Camilla was going through difficulties in her marriage as Andrew was cheating on her. Camilla turned to Charles, and he became her confidant, a shoulder to lean on. Over time, they moved beyond friendship, becoming romantically inclined again. Yet once Camilla realized Charles was preparing to marry Diana, she and Charles agreed to bring their romance to an end. Meanwhile, Diana imagined a fairy tale marriage and dreamed of building a happy and loving family with Charles. But little did she know that the storms were just gathering. On July 29, 1981, Charles and Diana were married in St. Paul's Cathedral, London. At the time, Charles was 32 and Diana was just 20. The ceremony was magnificent, broadcast worldwide, with an estimated 750 million viewers watching the first English woman in centuries to marry the heir to the throne. Notably, even Camilla was present among the guests at the wedding. After the ceremony, Charles and Diana embarked on their honeymoon, and at first, everything seemed to settle well. Charles focused on his wife, and in June 1982, their first son, Prince William, was born, marking the arrival of a new generation for the monarchy. The royal family was happy about William's birth, but then the cracks began to show in Charles and Diana's marriage as Charles hated the way the media turned its attention to Diana whenever they were in public. For instance, in 1983, when Charles and Diana toured Australia and New Zealand with baby William, the crowd went wild for Diana and the child. All the attention was on them, and the media followed suit, paying far less attention to Prince Charles. That made Charles jealous. He loved being in the spotlight, but this time he was pushed to the background. Another moment came when the public handed Charles gifts to give to Diana and barely acknowledged croissant the way they used to. These moments led to growing problems between them and widened a rift. But they managed to hide it until Harry was born. Charles had reportedly wanted a baby girl rather than a boy, and had grumbled about Harry being born with red hair. This moment marked a turning point in Charles and Diana's marriage, as Charles found his way back into Camilla's arms. But the story doesn't end here. Camilla. The thorn in Diana's marriage. Diana saw less of her husband after Harry's birth. Charles said he was busy with royal duties, but in truth, he was spending time with Camilla. Diana felt lonely, and coupled with postnatal depression after Harry's birth, she became a shadow of herself. Diana had no one to turn to. The royal family did not understand postnatal depression and labeled her as an attention seeker. After all, they said, she liked the media spotlight from the start, so they treated her pain as performance. This made Diana retreat into herself, and she began to harm herself in secrecy, feeling utterly alone and misunderstood. During this low period, Diana heard rumors from friends about Charles and Camilla's relationship, but she ignored them until one day she overheard Charles talking to Camilla in the bathroom. He was saying he had reached the end with Diana's postnatal symptoms, and then he told Camilla he loved her. Diana froze where she stood. She could not believe her husband was cheating on her. She returned to their room, crushed and heartbroken, and cried herself to sleep that night. Yet she was terrified of what a divorce would mean. She thought of her children and her future as she knew she couldn't win a fight against the royal family. This fear pushed Diana deeper into depression until she developed an eating disorder called bulimia. She would fill herself up with food only to throw it all up. People at the palace complained about her eating disorder and called it attention-seeking, but they never realized the truth behind the illness was the pain and betrayal of coping with a cheating husband. Even when Charles became aware that Diana knew about his affairs, he did not change. Instead, he grew worse, keeping late nights and becoming distant. Diana watched her fairy tale marriage crumble before her eyes because of Camilla. But what could she do? She was only a young woman with 2 royal sons to raise. Diana knew any wrong decision she made could cost her everything, so she decided to act carefully. In 1992, Diana took a bold step by collaborating with Andrew Morton, who published the explosive book, Diana, Her True Story. The book revealed the difficulties Diana faced in the royal palace, including Charles's affair with Camilla. However, in the book, Morton could not explicitly describe Charles and Camilla as lovers, so he referred to them as close friends. When the book was released, the royal family was shaken and faced heavy public backlash. Diana was summoned for questioning. She was asked if she had worked with Morton in the publication of his book, but she denied it. Buckingham Palace threatened to sue Morton for libel. Although Diana denied collaboration with Morton, she lied. Diana had secretly collaborated with him. Though she never met Morton face to face, she sent him tape recordings through her trusted friend James Colthurst. In those tapes, Diana described her unhappiness in the marriage and how Camilla had stolen her husband from her. The publication of the book led to Diana and Charles's separation. Still, the palace insisted there would be no divorce. During this period, Charles and Camilla only grew bolder as they were often seen together, and when away from London's watchful eyes, they behaved as though they were husband and wife. Diana, meanwhile, devoted herself to charity work and maintained custody of her sons. In 1993, the royal family faced another blow when the infamous Tampon Gate scandal broke. It was a recorded phone call in which Charles told Camilla he wished to live inside her trousers as a tampon. The conversation shocked the public and drew criticism. But even this humiliation did not end their relationship. In 1994, Charles gave a television interview in which he admitted to being unfaithful during his marriage. He attempted to justify himself, saying the affair began only after his marriage to Diana had irretrievably broken down. His confession was meant to soften his image, but instead it deepened public sympathy for Diana. The following year, Diana delivered her own bombshell. She appeared in a live interview with journalist Martin Bashir on the BBC's Panorama. For the first time, she spoke openly on camera about her private pain. Her most famous line, "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." This confirmed what many had suspected.
Do you think Mrs. Parker Bowles was a factor in the breakdown of your marriage?
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
That Camilla Parker Bowles had been the 3rd person in her marriage and the reason her marriage broke down. The world was stunned, and the sympathy for Diana reached its highest point. During the interview, Diana revealed that she had long been aware of Charles and Camilla's relationship, but felt powerless to act, knowing Charles was the future king and the monarchy would always shield him. Diana recalled how close friends, concerned about her marriage, had informed her about her husband's involvement with Camilla. Diana felt utterly alone in her marriage while Charles and Camilla exchanged love letters and spent time together. She was forced to maintain the image of the flawless wife for the cameras and the public. Eventually, Diana said she grew weary of pretending to be the perfect royal bride while living in misery. Her revelation about Mrs. Camilla Parker Bowles shocked not just the United Kingdom but the world, giving the public its first glimpse into the deep emotional pain she had endured inside Buckingham Palace. Diana also disclosed that living this double life drove her to develop bulimia, an eating disorder that left her weak but also gave her a temporary escape from duties and appearances with Charles. Yet the disorder never filled the emptiness in her heart. Seeking help, Diana turned to therapist Dr. Morris Lipsage, opening up to him about her fears and her sense of despair. He encouraged her to confront those fears, Camilla, if she wanted her life to go back to normal. But did Diana confront Camilla? Let's find out. In February 1989, during the 40th birthday party of Camilla's sister, Lady Annabel Goldsmith, in London, an opportunity came for Diana to confront Camilla. A few days before Lady Annabel's birthday, Charles asked Diana, out of formality, if she planned to attend the event. He did not expect her to say yes, knowing Camilla would be there. To his dismay, Diana accepted. When she arrived at the event, Diana refused to greet Camilla with the usual kiss on the cheek. Instead, she extended her hand for a stiff handshake. For Diana, the pretense of friendship was no longer necessary. Why act warm toward a woman who was destroying her marriage, sleeping with her husband, and pretending to care? Throughout the night, Diana appeared composed, laughing and chatting with other guests. But at one point, she realized she could not find Charles or Camilla. Alarmed, she searched the house and finally discovered them downstairs, talking with another man. She joined the group, and when the conversation ended, they prepared to return upstairs. But Diana asked for a private word with Camilla. The men stepped aside, but Charles's expression betrayed him. He knew Diana was about to do something he had long feared. When the room cleared, and it was only the two ladies, Diana turned to Camilla and told her that she knew what was going on with Charles. Camilla tried to brush it off, but Diana didn't let go. At last, Camilla gave her a cold reply, that Diana had everything she wanted. Men adored her. She had 2 children, and she had the crown beside her. "What more could you want?" Camilla asked. Diana's answer was simple. She wanted her husband. Not the cameras, not the attention, just Charles as her husband. She warned Camilla to stay away from Charles. The moment was awkward until someone stepped in and broke the tension. Charles was furious afterwards, and their marriage only grew worse after that night. Diana had tried to hold on to her marriage by warning Camilla to stay off, but Camilla never let go. She continued her relationship with Charles and made sure he spent less time at home until their marriage broke up. Diana's bombshell interview with BBC Panorama marked the end of Charles and Diana's marriage. After their divorce, Charles and Camilla continued with their relationship publicly. They, however, faced intense backlash and criticism, but they ignored it. On 31st August 1997, Diana died in Paris after a tragic car accident. But this didn't stop Camilla and Charles's relationship, and they eventually got married. Camilla finally got Diana's position as Charles's wife and queen consort. Even so, Diana's name never faded. Her sons kept her memory alive, and her story still lived with the public. So when Charlotte wore the Spencer Tiara, it struck a nerve. Some thought Camilla saw it as a reminder of the past. She could never take Diana's place, no matter how hard she tried. Diana's place in the royal family remained fixed through her children and grandchildren, while Camilla's presence felt more fragile in comparison. Diana may be gone, but she is not forgotten. She lives on in the people she left behind. Why do you think Queen Camilla went crazy after she saw Charlotte wearing Diana's tiara? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the following video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.